and welcome to Diplomatic Channel. I am Amarachi Ubani. Last week, a video of a Nigerian official facing off with a couple of Chinese officials over the forced evacuation of Nigerians from a hotel in Guangzhou, China, surfaced online. And you may or may not have seen it, but from the conversation in the video, the Nigerian official alleges passports were seized and that Nigerians have been quarantined for the required 14 days and are being held further without any explanation to the Nigerian consulate. Here's that video again.
They have tested negative and then they have given them the paper. Why are they giving them another 14 days? That is one. Two, all the police, the documents, these passports belong to the federal government of Nigeria. In line with international practice, no any country have the right to seize the international passport of another country.
As you must have heard, the Nigerians were put into forced quarantine for 14 days and then placed under further quarantine despite testing negative for the coronavirus twice. But there is more that happened that night.
You didn't communicate to us that you are going to go to all the Nigerian houses and then you are going to ask them to come out and go and quarantine them. Did you communicate to us? No. Nobody communicated to us.
Further reports suggest that there has been a crackdown on members of the African community in Guangzhou, which began Tuesday last week. Many are being thrown out of apartments they paid for, their passports seized by officials, put under forced quarantine even after completing the 14-day self-isolation period. In response to reports of Nigerians being evicted and forced into further quarantine, the Minister of Foreign Affairs, Mr. Jeffrey Onyema, had a private chat with the Chinese ambassador to Nigeria, Mrs. Zhu Pingjiang, concerning this to communicate the concerns of the Nigerian government over the mistreatment of Nigerians in China. He also called for an immediate Chinese intervention. Also, the chairman of the Nigeria Diaspora Commission, Mrs. Abike Dabiri-Erewa, says the federal government has resolved to ensure the protection of all Nigerians wherever they are. She does say, though, that Nigerians have to continue to obey laws of other countries, especially during the coronavirus pandemic, as consultations between the two countries continue. Nigerians are very invested in this issue, as you may understand. The Speaker of the House of Representatives, Mr. Femi Gbajabiamila, also summoned the Chinese ambassador, showing him the video of the Nigerian official and the situation, complaining to the Chinese officials there. Now, I'm just getting information from the Foreign Ministry spokesperson in China, Zhao Lijiang's remarks on Guangdong's anti-epidemic measures concerning African citizens in China. I'm going to read a bit of what that statement says. And he goes on to talk about the global pandemic that the world is currently experiencing, also mentioning that China and Africa are good friends, partners and brothers. Says the friendships are forged on the basis of joint efforts to seek national independence, liberation, economic development and better livelihood in the past decades. And that such time-tested friendship is a treasure for both Chinese and African people, and humanity shines through the darkness of the epidemic. Just to point out here that Guangzhou is home to one of China's largest African communities and has become a hub for African traders buying and selling goods to the continent. But this is happening in quite a peculiar time. It's happening during the coronavirus pandemic as Nigeria compiles a list of citizens who have died from the pandemic outside the country. My guest this week is Ambassador Aminu Wali, a former Minister of Foreign Affairs here in Nigeria and a former ambassador to the People's Republic of China. He joins us from our studio in Kano, northern Nigeria. Ambassador Wali, thank you for joining us on Diplomatic Channel. First off, what are your thoughts on the situation in Guangzhou, China, in which Nigerians are being evicted and put into forced quarantine?
Well, if that's true, then it's a bit disappointing. But when you are talking on issues of this nature, it's very, very delicate. One should not be naive to take whatever report that comes, hook, line, and sinker. I was in China as ambassador for 4.5 years. And of course, issues come up. Some disagreement between the Nigerian community and the Chinese authorities. We intervene. But you see, I cannot, in all honesty, be able to answer this question directly because, one, I'm not there. two, the main source that one should get his information, either be it any Nigerian or the government, is through our consulate and the mission in Beijing. We have a consulate in Guangzhou, where there's a consul general, and this is to look after the welfare of Nigerians. And there's also the embassy in Beijing. So unless, when you hear something of this nature, first of all, you now try to reach out to the missions there, both the one in Guangzhou and the embassy in Beijing. But these things I cannot really, in all honesty. But if it happens, then I think it's time for the consulate and the embassy to go and lay complaint at the Chinese Foreign Ministry. But I have seen an interview where, I've seen a meeting between the Speaker of the House of Representatives and the Chinese ambassador to Nigeria. This issue was raised. And of course, the ambassador cannot actually answer that question straight away, because he too has to now go back to China to find out what actually happened.
What is usually the protocol for situations like this when they happen? And here I'm talking about the Nigerian official who is seen challenging the Chinese officials in the video that has gone viral.
Well, the protocol is simple. In diplomatic parlance, once something happens to a countryman, what you do is you take it up with the foreign ministry. That is, if it's the embassy. Now, if it's the consulate, which is in Guangzhou, it takes it up with the Guangzhou authorities, because you see, Guangzhou is the headquarters of Guangdong province, and that province is a state of its own, and therefore a lot of these issues, when they happen, is a fairly localized issue where the top level officials of the Chinese authorities don't have an idea. What we have seen in the video is the information that came to us from the Nigerian authorities, the Nigerians living there, and also the Nigerian official. Now, the next step that we ought to do in a very diplomatic way is now reach out to the authorities in Guangdong province. This is what had happened. We protest and we need explanation. And this is something that should have been done. So here, I believe there should be more information in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Nigeria if the consulate in Guangzhou or the embassy in Beijing has confronted the Chinese Foreign Ministry with this issue.
Now, naturally, a lot of Nigerians are outraged by the videos that are making the rounds, even as even more because the Chinese government is refusing to address it. I just read, just before this interview, a statement by the government concerning Africans in China, but they did not actually address the issue in particular. Now, from your experience as ambassador to China, what's the thinking, behind, such moves like with the Chinese government when issues like this are raised, or are they just ignored?
Well, nobody can tell you the thinking within the Chinese government. The only thing that we can do, which is the normal thing to do diplomatically, is to go and raise this issue with the Chinese Foreign Ministry. We can't do it anything otherwise. The Chinese Foreign Ministry and that will delve into this issue to go and find out from whichever province this has happened, and they will get a report back to the Chinese Foreign Ministry, who will now communicate to the consulate or to the embassy.
There's also been a statement by the African group of ambassadors to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in China, raising concerns over the situation. And in the statement, they enumerate some of the complaints that they have received, such as Togolese Nigerians, Beninois being ejected from the hotels in the middle of the night because they're Africans, a group of African students studying in Sun Yat-sen University in Guangzhou being made to undergo the nucleic acid test in spite of the fact that they have had no travel history within the stated period, and then seizure of passports of African nationals, persistent harassment, just to name a few. Even before now, Ambassador, Nigerians in Guangzhou have been complaining about other forms of maltreatment. It certainly does not speak of the hospitality that China preaches. Did you receive such complaints or witness anything similar during your time as ambassador there?
I would not be that naive to now say this thing did not happen or it has happened. During my time, quite a few issues came up, and we handled it in a very, very nice, decent way. That is by going through the diplomatic way, go to the foreign ministry, lay our complaints, and demand explanation.
How does this reconcile with the help that China is providing Nigeria, the help that Nigeria is getting from China in light of the coronavirus pandemic?
Well, you see, that's what I'm saying. China values Nigeria in terms of the relationship that exists between the two countries. Therefore, I don't think they will be that rash to now commit some of these atrocities and still continue to pretend it doesn't happen. I believe eventually China will come up with an explanation or with a reply, whether the thing has happened or not, and what the action they would have taken against those officials that perpetrated this against Nigerians.
And you know, Ambassador, while some have blamed China for the outbreak itself, there are a few things to learn from the country about how to handle a pandemic. What do you think gives China an edge over other countries when it comes to controlling spread of the coronavirus?
Well, I mean, China definitely has an edge because it happens in China, and they're able to contain the coronavirus within the period of time that they have done, which is become impossible in some of those most advanced countries. So which means anybody that underrates the capacity of the Chinese in terms of controlling issues of this nature, or even in other fields of endeavor, is getting it wrong. The Chinese are really dedicated, committed to doing what they set out to do. And we should appreciate their gesture to come and see what they can do to advise us in trying to contain our own situation in Nigeria. Not only in Nigeria, in a lot of African countries.
And also, what do you make of the connection that people have been putting together, the connection between coronavirus pandemic and the 5G network?
Well, I don't want us to get involved in all these conspiracy theory. This is a major international issue between two powers who are struggling for dominance of the waves in terms of communication, that is the US and China. So all sorts of stories will be coming out in terms of the 5G project that is going on in various parts of the world. Now China is very much advanced in that technology, and therefore is posing a threat to dominate that area internationally. And of course, that creates a lot of friction between China and other dominant powers, which anybody knows. I mean, okay, it's between China and the United States. So I don't want us to be drawn into that. If you go through go through the Google, find out if there's any problem with the 5G radiation. And it has always been dismissed. And Google is an American organization.
Any advice on how the Nigerian government should handle the situation? The situation of Nigerians being, harassed and moved from place to place in China, especially during this coronavirus pandemic.
Let us leave this with the Nigerian Foreign Ministry. They have the staff and the knowledge and the reach to really get across to Chinese authorities and try to get exactly what happened. And if at all there is anything untoward that happened to Nigerians, now we'll hold them responsible and they will have to make reparation to Nigerians. We will insist on China making reparation to Nigerians, especially when we now have real evidence, even from their own end, from the Chinese end, then we force them to really make reparations to Nigerians for whatever losses they might have suffered.
Thank you again, Ambassador Aminu Wali, for joining us on Diplomatic Channel. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
When we come back after the break, we'll take a closer look at measures in place to curb the spread of the coronavirus pandemic. Stay with us.